Hey guys, this is Issues with Toddy One Skip, and this is Toddy One Skip. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you for allowing me and my hair to be part of your day. Not the greatest hair day here. Hey guys, so once again, I really want to thank those of you that have been very supportive of me and see that I have no hidden agenda here. For those of you that are, out to get me because you don't like what I'm saying, don't listen. So guys, I want to tell you that DowntheRabbitholenews did this, had Jamie Mustard on, who was just fascinating, right? So I think he got out of Scientology in 2009, but he's second generation. He talks about that and what the difference is between the original Scientologists first generation that have been there and the ones that were born into it, the ones that remember a life before and had a life before, and then compared to what he and Miriam Francis, so as you guys know, Miriam is the one that asked for the affidavit that her mom supposedly had, and the Aftermath show put that screenshot that Miriam's mom had done an affidavit. Well, Miriam asked for it, and she can't get it. And it's believed that, Mike wasn't going to help her get it because he was concerned about what could be used to get him in trouble, which can, impugn him and worse. So I've had people in my comments tell me, why do I believe that? And I believe it because I do. Because I've laid it out there. There's two ways to go with it. You could believe it, you can't believe it. I believe it. But Jamie talks about, and it was heartbreaking. Again, another fucking heartbreaking story about a kid that was through no fault of their own, yet told that every rotten thing that happens to them, they brought it onto themselves. They fall out of a bunk bed at 3 years old. It's themselves. Every shitty, crappy thing that happened to them in life, it was their fault. Do you think David Miscavige says everything that's gone wrong now is my fault? You don't think he blames Danny Masterson, or you think he pulled Danny Masterson in? You think that David Miscavige thinks that he pulled all this shit in? Or you think he blames people? Because I've seen the hate sites. Again, the difference between a criminal and a non-criminal in Scientology is whether you're in the group or you're out of the cult. That's just the way it goes, right? I've already showed you that example of how that works. Here's the fascinating thing. So what happened was Miriam reached out to Jamie. And Jamie felt obligated to help Miriam. And while that happened, it triggers your own memories, and it's so difficult. These ex-Scientologists that have really tried to do better with their life, you could see the exhaustion. You could see. But you got to hear the story of Jamie, because he was basically illiterate till he was 19 years old. And then, he's written books now. He's so intelligent, so articulate, so smart, And he would have wasted his life as a Scientologist completely, because what he's done now is amazing. And he actually credits Leah and Mike for the show that helped him get out and get him on his feet. He does. But now he's gotten to the part of his healing process that he wants to know who did this to him. Who was the one that wrote the rules that caused him to have the shitty childhood that he had? All the rules that kept him away from his family. He wants to know. Him and Miriam want to know. But another thing that Jamie has done is he talks about this nerve, this block. It's a shot, and it's a block, and it's for post-traumatic stress injury, which used to be post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Well, they have proven that you can see on a brain scan, on an MRI or on a brain scan, that there is an injury in the brain when somebody goes through something that is just horrifically traumatic. And there is a shot that can stop that reaction to bring you joy back in your life. And the military uses it. So that's fascinating, and that's what Jamie is working on. In the meantime, Miriam, who's going to get this treatment, has reached out to him to help, and so that the kids that were in Scientology can join their voices together to get the older people in Scientology to please answer their questions. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. Let's listen to some of this, guys. Let's listen to some of this, because it's fascinating, and I highly recommend you guys listen to this interview. It's not really an interview. It's a platform. She doesn't ask a lot of questions, Rabbit. She just gives him a platform to talk, which is great. That's because I didn't even know about this guy. I'm glad I know. This is fascinating to me. So I think it's really helpful. This is like, see, this is somebody that wants to help, and he's doing everything in his power to help so that this doesn't happen to children that are in Scientology. Mike Rinder, he's not doing that. Mark Headley, he's not doing that. Claire, they're not doing that. A lot of these people are just talking about, what it was like to talk to Tom Cruise and shit. And all of this shit just really makes Tom Cruise look bad. And I like John Travolta. I'm so confused. Where do I put him in all of this? This is horrible behavior by adults. And you can't tell me that these other people don't know about it. Of course they know about it. Leah knew about it. But Mike Rinder, he knew more than knew about it. Because he was head of the office that wrote a lot of these procedures. And then followed through with them and had to answer to Mike Rinder, who then had to answer to Claire Headley. And these people are on the Aftermath Foundation. And all the infighting is causing nothing but problems now, guys. But come on, let's listen. Let's listen to Jamie. It's fascinating.
I feel obligated to stand with Miriam, who, after I did that interview a month or two later, reached out to me for my help and asked me to support her, right?
Absolutely.
So I feel very obligated to do that. Why do I feel obligated to do that? I feel obligated to do that because at birth, I was taken from my parents at the UCLA Medical Center and taken to what I'll call a baby factory in downtown Los Angeles, run by the Church of Scientology, okay? Where I was, 30 to 40 babies to one nanny, lying for the first 2 years of my life, no human touch, lying in my own poop, crusted, the lying in my own sick. When one woman who was one of my caretakers there reached out to me after I kind of did my first video and said, "Did you remember how they used to bathe you?" And I said, "No." And she said, they would line the babies up 10, 20 at a time, 30 at a time. And they would have one bath, and they would dip us in, take our diapers off, discard the diapers, dip us in the bath, grab the next baby, dip us in the bath. They never changed the water. Okay. This was in downtown LA. And then I spent the next 12 years of my life, the bulk of which, growing up alone, relatively alone, rarely seeing my parents, going years at a time without seeing my mother, in what I would call a Scientology orphanage. That was absolutely brutal. From the Asho Day House, which is where I was a baby at 2 or 3, we moved to this building on Melrose, which is where the worst things happen. I know, and I didn't have underwear. I never learned to brush my teeth. I was never in school except for a brief reprieve in Oregon where I got straight Fs for a few years. And then I spent maybe 2 months at Lockwood Elementary School. I never learned to brush my teeth. I wasn't made to shower. The dorms that we slept in, I was on the 3rd bunk at 3 years old, fell out of it constantly. in this militaristic environment, onto a floor. It's just hard to describe the loneliness and the isolation and then just the inner city poverty of that situation. Okay. I was semi-literate until I was 19 years old. And in a flash of very, very fortunate and lucky opportunity, a relative gave me a way to work on my education.
Guys, seriously, that's criminal behavior. And anybody that watched it happen, allowed it to happen, knew of it happening, and didn't say this is child abuse is guilty. Just like in the war crimes, the people that stood back after the fact and got in trouble later for just watching it happen. It's accomplice to criminal behavior. And it gets worse. Watch how it gets worse, how it becomes even just more criminal, more despicable. Watch.
There's little kids in the inner clergy, the inner sanctum of the private Navy, that we did this to ourselves. It's very difficult to shake that off. Yes. It took me 8 years to even begin to shake this off after getting out in 2009, mostly with the help of Mike and the Tampa Bay Times article. It took me probably 8 years to even begin to shake it off. So I just feel like we're at the stage where we need to know the who.
Guys, how dare that rotten behavior be thrown on children? That children should have to carry the blame for things that clearly aren't their fault. How is that clearing the planet? How is that making the planet a better place? To dumb down people when this guy has left Scientology now and he is making a difference in the world. So how is Scientology better at all? How can somebody even argue that?
Accountability is now, all of them. Anyone who did harm should be prosecuted. Should it be the people that wrote the rules?
Yeah.
Should it be the people that sat there while the rules were being delivered? Who is responsible for all of this? And it's still going on. There's still children in there, guys. When the stuff with the Catholic Church happened, they prosecuted a lot of people, including the offender and those that covered up, and those that sat there and knew about it and tried to cover it up, and even the attorneys. So I just don't, that's how I see all of them. But that's just my thought. I just don't know.
I don't want this to be about a single person covering things up. I want the collective, the positive idea of the collective, that maybe we're never in this, and the ones that were in this, to resonate, to resound and reverberate. Who is responsible for this? Because I really feel I spent most of my life being told that I was responsible for this. I did this to me. I was indoctrinated. Anyone that I grew up with, or anyone that's part of this quote second-gen community or born-in community, understands what I'm saying right now in a very personal way. We were on the business end of this thing, okay? And we were told our entire lives, the ones that were born in or went to there as little kids in the inner clergy, the inner sanctum of the private Navy, that we did this to ourselves. It's very difficult to shake that off. Yes. It took me 8 years to even begin to shake this off after getting out in 2009, mostly with the help of Mike and the Tampa Bay Times article. So, when it comes to these things, why I talk about what I've overcome, and is because people see me now and they see this person that looks somewhat normal and has accomplished things to them, but I'm not normal. I'm scarred and I've been beat up by this thing. And my family has been ripped apart by this thing. I have a homeless brother, formerly homeless brother, he might call himself, but still almost homeless brother. He was homeless for 7 years in Washington Square Park in New York. I'm estranged from my mother who's still in this thing. I'm estranged from my brother who's still in this thing. And my other brother has been, really, really hurt by this thing. Okay. Look at what happened to me. I think to myself, why did this happen? How did this happen? And in my view, a lot of really good people didn't want to get involved. So they just turned and looked away from this little brown kid that was dying. I had probably 4 near-death experiences, 2 medical, 1 involving a fire. It's in that were part of these structures. A kind of chronic head lice that cannot be even imagined, like having an ecosystem in your head. Okay, and then there were the public spankings. All right, the amount of physical and psychological abuse, and then the worst part of it, worse than the psychological abuse and the physical abuse, was the fact that we were told from birth. I'm in this thing from birth. Okay. I'm a little, is that if we're angry or upset, we're dramatizing, or we're told from 3 years, if we're crying, to quote, knock off the HENR, which means human emotion and reaction. We're told to knock off the bank, which means your reactionary mind, your subconscious mind, your active mind. Like if you're upset, it can never be because something happened to you, even at 2 or 3 or 4. It's because of something you did. And it's because of in the past, right? Imagine a baby, a toddler being allowed to experience emotion. Imagine being 3 years old and being told that you are a trillion-year-old being in a baby body and should be treated like an adult. This is what I endured. And good people did nothing because they didn't want to get involved. I don't believe that I'm in a position for Miriam Francis to reach out to me from Australia and ask me for help, I can't turn my back on that if I want to. I know right now that there's been things going on, hushed tones from, sadly to say, I feel like I'm being fair gamed by the Aftermath Foundation. I'm not being, it's funny, like when I came out, I thought I was going to be fair gamed by the church. I never thought I was going to be fair gamed by the Aftermath Foundation.
The people that have supposedly left.
Yeah. So I have things that I want to say about that, but I don't want to say about them in the context of, purely in the context of Scientology. I want to talk about these things that that's going on right now in the context of the human condition, in the context of relieving suffering and helping people. I am concerned with my past. I do want to help the people from my past. But if you read my book, I'm working with Rwandan genocide survivors. After the military, the largest cohort of people that get this treatment, this reset of the nervous system, is sexual assault victims. In 2003, 2004, one of the leading anesthesiologists in the country was using this 100-year-old, almost 180-year-old shot at that point, to treat women through. He was innovating the 80-year-old shot to treat women who were going through menopause. He thought tingling hands and hot flashes were connected, and he was moving the shot around. And I'll explain where it is and where it goes and how it works. And he was incredibly successful to the point. Mocked in the beginning, like any medical innovation. And then when the research papers came out, he was hailed as a genius. I mean, the Norwegian government, brought him to Norway and had him teach their top health professionals. But when he was doing this research in 2003, some of these women that were going through menopause that he was treating and giving relief to using this shot were saying that their post-traumatic stress symptoms went away. So he started researching, and he published on it for the first time in 2006. Since 2006, it's been heavily adopted first and foremost by the US military, who adopts everything first. They desegregated first before the nation did. Okay. They're probably at this point, if you collect it all over the world, they're probably doing 20 to 30,000 of these treatments a year. Obama endorsed this treatment as far back as 2008. And I know there's been some criticism that it's not, quote, FDA approved. Well, it is FDA approved for pain. And we're trying to widen the FDA approval specifically for post-traumatic stress injury. Okay. Because it's not a disorder, which I will explain. Like I said, which I will explain. So as far as this like FDA approval, again, another straw man. Vitamins are not FDA approved. Makeup is not FDA approved. Google how much are the things that you use every day that are not FDA approved, and you'll laugh. Okay, so this idea, and it is FDA approved for pain, and post-traumatic stress injury is very painful. Okay, so we're looking to get that expanded. In 2012, one of the most famous psychiatrists in the world, a guy named Frank Ochberg, who does the Forward to the Invisible Machine, who was the guy that endorsed what I'll call he defined Stockholm Syndrome for the FBI in the 1970s. He started lobbying to get the name changed from post-traumatic stress disorder to post-traumatic stress injury. Okay. And I think, and the APA hasn't done it yet, but they're moving towards it with the science, because that's what the science is revealing. And so I think 38 states have changed the name from disorder to injury. This is mainstream science.
APA, for those that don't know, is the American Psychology Association.
Psychiatric,
yes. Okay.
Yeah. And so in terms of people who've endorsed this, Obama endorsed this in 2008. Delta Force uses it. Navy SEALs uses it. Special Operations Forces uses it. Dakota Meyer talked about it on Rogan. He is the winner of the Medal of Honor. Okay. And thousands of sexual assault survivors have found that this is the only way that they've been able to get any sort of permanent relief. And I want to explain how it works. But this idea that it's someone on the fringe is ridiculous. It's been covered on 60 Minutes, CBS This Morning, Wired Magazine. Okay. And I think if it's good enough for Special Operations Forces and Navy SEALs, it's good enough for a sexual assault victim. And it's good enough for anybody that grew up in a cult, or anybody that's going to resonate with the trauma symptoms that I'm about to explain.
Okay.
Okay. So what happened is I got invited for my other book on art and business to speak at JFK Auditorium on the subject of communication. While I was there, I had found out about this treatment because after the aftermath, I started looking at myself and realizing that I needed to get some counseling. So the aftermath led for me going to get some counseling. In that counseling, I got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress.
Okay.
From when I did that, I started to be going, God, I don't want to have this like scarlet letter of having post-traumatic stress from what I've been through. I denied it too. I talk about it in the book. The therapist, I said, I don't have that. And I laughed at her, and she looked at me like I, kicked her dog or something. And that was like, that look that she gave me was what started me on this, really facing what had happened to me. And that I was a victim, because the worst thing you can be in Scientology is a victim. Okay. It's like you're less than a person if you're a victim. Okay. So I had to face that I was a victim. I had been victimized. I had been abused, when I'd been indoctrinated my whole life not to ever say that I was those things or believe that I was those things. The Aftermath TV show did that for me. Leah Remini, Mike Rinder. Okay. So I got invited to write. I had another book that came out. One of the guys that reached out to me that was a fan of my other book is one of the top forensic psychiatrists in the world, a guy named John Faber, who's a close friend of mine now. He is the former director of behavioral health for all of Humana. Okay. And now he's a clinician near Los Angeles. I had him vet this thing for me in the middle of COVID. I went and got this treatment for myself. It's the most transformative thing I've ever done. The doctor invited me to dinner. We became friends. And then because I'm an author, I was able to secure a book deal. It's distributed by Penguin Random House. Okay. And that book is in every Barnes & Noble in America. Okay. So it's okay for Barnes & Noble. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So they're not worried about it. I know there's buzzes out there that the Aftermath Foundation or other people, again, I think there's a fair game campaign going on about me. So if you hear whispers about me, it's probably I hate to break it sounds sad, but it's probably coming from the Aftermath Foundation. And if they had any concerns about the FDA approval or me making money, they have my phone number and my email. Give me a call. Okay. And how I originally got brought into this thing is right after I did that show, Aaron called me the next day and I didn't know him. And he said, hey, listen, I was just removed from the board. The Aftermath starts giving me the whole thing, tells me everything. Tells me about Julie, all the stuff that happened in LA, everything. And I said, well, why are you telling me this? And he's like, because they brought up your name as one of the reasons that I was removed, or one of the things not that I was removed, that one of just the many sins that he had committed. And I was like, listen, Aaron, it took you 3 months to convince me to do that. I didn't sleep for 6 weeks because of the humiliation of doing this interview. And they're saying that it's bad. That's my childhood, is them telling me that everything I did from birth was bad, that something was wrong with me, that I had an ailment, and how I braved this to bring this. And it was really sleepless nights because I was never going to talk about it. And then within a day, somebody from the Aftermath Foundation calls Aaron because they got one single email saying that my work was fraudulent. Now, I opened up my Instagram. I got hundreds of emails from around the world, mostly from people never involved in Scientology. That seems to be the audience. Okay. And a lot of people went and got the treatment. Tons of people studied it. Okay. That broke my heart that I would somehow they got one. Nobody emailed me saying it was bad or fraud. Okay, the Aftermath Foundation got one email. Okay, I wonder who from. Could it have been OSA? So the fact that they invoked my name as a bad thing after I was still reverberating from should I have done that? Like, I'm not kidding when I was saying, or I'm not exaggerating. I wasn't sleeping. I didn't want to do it. Okay, and then they invoked me as something bad. So that was the first way I got pulled into this. Is they pulled me in, right? So when they got that letter, they had my phone number. Right? I'm reachable on LTD and going to my contact page. I get emails all the time from people that don't know me that want to talk to me. Okay. But nope, they did that. Okay. So, I do this treatment. It changes my life. I become friends with the doctor that invented it. We go out to dinner. He explains all the science. I believe it. Not long after that, I get invited for my book, The Iconist, to go speak at Fort Bragg, which is the largest military institution in the world, to Special Operations Forces at JFK Auditorium. Okay.
Wow.
And one of the things that was, I think, going around about me is that someone accused me, I'm not sure who it was, of being a hustler. Okay. Like, I don't know. I mean, I was hired by the Department of Defense, Nike, Adidas, Intel, Symantec, Cisco. I've got a degree from the London School of Economics. I did a special seminar when I was at Fort Bragg to psychological operations to help them do better counter-propaganda against the Russians and the Chinese. Okay. So I'll take that as a compliment. Do I hustle? Yes. I've had to hustle because of where I come from, because it broke me. Okay. But I think that books take years. Right. And I've done 2 of them, and I'm right. And I'm working on another one right now. And I just had a children's book come out on a major publisher in November called Kids Book About Resilience.
Yes.
Okay. So, for a hustler, I'm like, the one thing I never thought I would ever do with my life, Rabbit, was because I had no ability to do long-term things because I never had normal education. I mean, at 19, I could read at a high level because I was studying the doctrine from 9, but I had a kindergarten writing level and a kindergarten math level at 19. Okay. I was a mess. So I get invited to Fort Bragg. I go to Fort Bragg. The colonels that were invited me to Fort Bragg knew I got interested in post-traumatic stress after I got this treatment for myself. Okay. And what was happening for me is, at any time I got even the slightest negative news, I would feel overwhelming sensations in my body. Okay. Right. And I never thought of it was biological. When I saw that, it made total sense to me. So they said, hey, why don't you stay a few extra days and you can we'll take you and you can learn more about post-traumatic stress while you're at Fort Bragg. And then the doctor ended up coming with me, and they arranged for him to do what's called grand rounds, which is where they share all the innovations in the treatment with the top medical minds at WOMAC, which is the most advanced military hospital in the world. So the doctor ended up coming with me, which normally takes a year. These colonels arranged it in 6 weeks because of who they were. And the doctor did grand rounds at WOMAC. So this doctor, this controversial doctor, he's done grand rounds at WOMAC. He's done grand rounds at Walter Reed and testified before Congress. This is out there. Okay. So I'm there. I'm doing this post-traumatic stress meeting with the Health Initiative Task Force at Fort Bragg in this kind of therapy building. And I'm listening to the worst stories from Iraq and Afghanistan from special forces fighters that you can imagine. They were all being told when they came back that they had PTSD. And I was angry because I knew that this thing worked because I'd done it on myself and I looked at the publications. So I told them, you guys don't have that. Here's why it's so important, Rabbit. And then I'm gonna get into the symptoms. And then I'll read my statement, and then you can ask me whatever you want. Why it's so important is that if it's a biological injury, and it is, and we're telling people that they're crazy, like, what if somebody had a broken leg? Would you say that you have broken leg disorder? Would you tell them that they're crazy? When you tell somebody that has a physical injury, the book is called The Invisible Machine because it's a simple mousetrap of a mechanism, and you can't see it. Okay. But you can see it on an fMRI. Okay. You can see it on a brain scan. Okay. If you're telling someone that has a physical injury that they're crazy, that stigma does a lot of damage. It's horrifying. So I want that stigma lifted. I want the stigma. I don't want people that have a biological injury told that they're mentally ill. That's really the issue here. Okay. So I'm at Fort Bragg. I'm listening to the worst stories you can imagine. The guy says, you want to speak at the end? I don't even get the idea that the guy that runs the task force likes me very much. I'm pissed off. It's 2 hours of the worst stories you could ever imagine of death and just of people killing people. And I get up and say, yeah, like, can I say whatever I want? He says, yeah. And I said, yeah, I'm angry that you guys are special forces, the best of the best. And you're coming back and being told we're crazy. Any of you can go to Chicago and feel relief. A month later, Sovereign Air private jet company donated a plane to send my first 10 guys from Fort Bragg to Chicago. Okay. And now, then third group opened up. Anyone that wanted to go and get it from the inventor could go to Chicago. Because they were doing it when I went to Womack, they were still doing it from a 10-year-old paper. That's why he did grand rounds to fix that. Okay, so I'm angry. I give my piece. The guy that runs the task force says, for some reason, that shifts something in him. He sees that I'm an honest person. He says, hey, man, come on over and talk to me. And then he said, Danny, have you, this guy named Jeff Dardia, who runs the Health Initiative Task Force, Special Operations Forces medic. And he says, do you know what operator syndrome is? I said, never heard of that. He goes, this is what happens to a Special Forces fighter when they've never been to war. I got 2 more minutes of this, and then I'm going to give my statement, okay? This is what happens to somebody that's never been to war. But they're in Afghanistan, in Iraq on their 3rd deployment. They've been away from their family through 3 years. They hear the bombs. There's IEDs around the corner. So they're carrying this chronic stress that's called allostatic load, which is what I carried as a child. They get this condition, even if they're never in a firefight, called operator syndrome. And he starts showing, and I start reading the symptoms of operator syndrome. This is what led to the book. And these are the symptoms of operator syndrome. It's everything that you would experience if you were in the jungle 2,000 years ago and a tiger jumped out at you. You would experience anxiety, hair trigger, reactivity, hypervigilance, hyperarousal, paranoia, sense of doom. In the military, where people trained to protect, the ultimate form of flight is suicide. In my neighborhoods where I grew up, where life was cheaper, in the inner city LA, the ultimate form of fight is homicide or physical aggression. So when I saw these symptoms of operator syndrome, I didn't see the military. I saw the Mexican neighborhoods where I grew up. I saw immigrants, and I saw the people that grew up under the circumstances that I grew up under the dorms with these same circumstances. So I want to say one more thing, and I want to finish off with this. So if you're experiencing any of the circumstances, the symptoms I just named, anxiety, hair trigger, reactivity, hypervigilance, hyperarousal, mild paranoia, sense of doom, suicidal ideation, or aggressive behavior on any level, you could have this biological injury. And I want you to think of it this way. Peter Levine wrote this in the 80s. I think it was, he started talking about this concept of, fight or flight is what would be a reaction to running from a tiger. Okay. This is a biological injury. And scientists have known this is a biological injury for a long, long time. In 1970, there was a book came out, and this is the last I'm going to say on it. Okay, but if you resonate with these symptoms, look into it. If you can't afford my book, get it from the library. I'm not trying, all right? Or send me a message and I'll talk to you. I'm going to give you a referral link so that people can get waived the intake fee if they want to go through the Stella Center, which has all the modern protocols.
Wow.
It's gone from 70% to 85 to 90% more effective in the permanent relief of most severe post-traumatic stress symptoms in the last 10 years with the modern refinements. So it's important that you get what's called DSR, which is dual sympathetic reset version of SGB, select ganglion block. All it is, okay, so I'm gonna basically talk about how we know it's biological. I'm gonna explain what the procedure is, and then maybe I can get into my statement. Okay. I don't like to call it a select ganglion block because when we think of a nerve blockade, we're typically thinking of like a deadening of the nerves to relieve pain.
Yes.
This is not that. This is a local anesthetic that turns the nerves off for 10 minutes, and then they reboot 10 minutes later at baseline. I have sent earthquake survivors, Rwandan genocide survivors, human trafficking survivors, sexual assault survivors, countless special forces operators. I worked with directly with the guy that not only a guy that survived Black Hawk Down, but he also was the guy that led the mission that captured Saddam Hussein. He's one of the first people that I sent. Okay. Stephen Porges of the Kinsey Institute, who is one of the most renowned trauma doctors in the world. He's unimpeachable. Wrote this. In The Invisible Machine, Lipov and Mustard rewrite the recovery narrative for many who have experienced personal disruptions and life compromises. Through personal stories, we learn that traumatic experiences may lock the nervous system into a chronic state of fight or flight, while compromising feelings of safety and sociality. The Lipov treatment gives permission to retune, enabling one to return to sociability, playfulness, and social connection. The most powerful thing that I got out of it is the ability to experience joy. Like my biology, I was struggling with it. So the other reason that I want okay, so I'm just going to roll through my points on this blog post. Why I'm here is I want to bring this away from Special Forces and Delta Force and Navy SEALs and bring this into the mainstream society. That's why I wrote the book. If you read the book, even if you don't get the treatment, I don't think too many people could read the book and not understand at the end of it that what's going on inside you most of the time is biological. Even if you never get the treatment, we've just taken the stigma away, and I've just changed your life. When we started writing the book, the publisher, the editor said to me, "What's your ultimate goal for this?" And I said, "I don't care if people get the treatment. I want them to know that they're not crazy, that they have a physical injury to their body. That's my goal." Police, and then as far as the thing that's going on between Miriam and Mike, and somehow again, if anything, I've been trying to protect Mike and get Miriam to hold back, right? But this police chief, this law enforcement officer recently told me, that the reason it's so important to find out the specifics of what was done to us as children, what was done to Miriam, what was done to me, is for us to have closure. We can't just know the how. We have to know the why and the who to have closure. Okay, and so that's all we want. We believe, Mike Ritter has countless videos, or very numerous videos, where he says this is what OSA did. And he, in his book, he says he ran it for 2.5 decades here and there, give or take. We want to know who did this to us. Mike says he talked to the FBI. I'm grateful for that. I don't care about the FBI. I want to know who did this to me. Like there's a policy that came out in 1986 that has the COO's name on it with MR about the regulation of children. I'd come back from Oregon. All my friends were 14, 15 years old, living in the street. They were told if they didn't sign the billion-year contract, they had to leave. So all these kids were huddled around LA, some homeless, some struggled in apartments because they didn't want to sign the billion-year contract. Who did that? That occurred, I think, in early 86 or 1985. This policy on how the children are to be handled in terms of labor and school, that has Mike Render's name on it in 1986. Everything okay, Rabbit? Can I keep going?
Yes, keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm not here. This idea that there's a team of exposing Scientology and not exposing Scientology is not my concern. Okay. I'm not on team exposing Scientology or not exposing Scientology. I'm more concerned with just relieving human suffering for all people. Scientology causes a lot of human suffering. I'm grateful to anybody that does that. But this idea that there's two teams of people, those that want to expose it and those that don't, I completely reject that notion. Also, what team could be more important than stopping and getting justice for child sexual assault, the most vulnerable part of our population? There's no more important movement than that. What could be a greater abuse than the harm of a child? All of us are on this team first. And if this gets in the way of exposing Scientology, then so be it. Mike Brown would never say this. He was attacked in this thing. Mike Brown is a war hero. Mike Brown was shot down in Afghanistan. You would never hear him say that. Okay. And he went down with his ship, and every single person on that ship survived. And because he saw to it. Okay. So that's how I see Mike Brown. I find him to be one of the most unimpeachable people I've ever met. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know what the point is in attacking Mike Brown, who currently is active duty U.S. military that trains our nation's Chinook pilots. He's a trainer. He's training people that keep us alive and keep us a nation state, which we all enjoy. Okay. Again, exposing Scientology as the most important thing is a false construct. Okay. We need to expose the criminals that actually did these acts. I don't know who they are. And then if we expose these criminals, then we expose Scientology. If we don't expose the criminals, we can't expose Scientology. I believe that Mike and Leah are heroes for their work. But I also think that if you helped run this organization and there was criminal activities going through there, the statute of limitations will probably run out on all of them. We need the specifics. And if you don't want to give us the specifics, just please understand that it's painful. That you know, like Jordan Belfort was in this incredible movie called The Wolf of Wall Street. I like to watch his podcast. Okay. Yeah. I feel like in certain ways the guy's redeemed himself. I don't want to see Jordan Belfort as the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Yeah,
and I don't want to see ex-int executives on any sort of board to help abuse victims. I think it's a conflict of interest. That's my opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right. I believe that the only way to expose Scientology is to expose the criminals first. I believe that there's people sitting on the board at the Aftermath. There was 3 of those people. One was the Watchdog Committee Celebrity Center for 15 years plus. One was RTC right next to Dave. And then Mike. I believe I really am begging for them to understand the relief that we would experience if they would just tell us who did this.
Yeah.
Mike said that Miriam's case could bring down Scientology. Okay. There was nothing in the email exchanges that I've seen between Mike and Miriam where I saw that as a reality. So what I know is that growing up in this beast, in this machine, is that the COS normalizes a human atrocity, and I don't get any sort of necessity. Like when the Aftermath aired, they fair gamed Sina, who did her episode, and a other sexual assault victim that did her episode with Miriam. They didn't fair game Miriam, and the reason they didn't fair game Miriam is because they knew it was true. Okay, even Matt Pesh talks about there being a slush fund where he covered up sexual assault. There's a video out there. Okay, yes. And he and Amy seem like really nice people. Okay, so what I'm saying is, who made this slush fund? Who wrote the policy on it? Miriam asked that. That's a reasonable question. My work is I lived through something with 4 near-death experiences that I shouldn't have lived through. When something like that happens to you and you live under that kind of crush for your childhood, you almost ask yourself, why am I here? Why am I alive? Yeah. And the answer that I came up with, the existential choice I made, was to have empathy, to bring relief to others. And that's what my goal is. And I'm going to focus primarily on that. And I'm very appreciative of the people that are out there exposing Scientology, but my work is to, I'm trying to focus on that audience when I can, but also the broader audience through my work.
Guys, you don't see an issue with the Aftermath Foundation. You don't see a problem with Mike Render, Mark Headley, Claire. You don't see a problem with them. This shot is to reset your system so that you can go on and stop having the obstacle of past traumas that were brought on by Scientology. And people are out to get this guy. They're out. That's for the greater good. And you guys don't see a problem with the Aftermath Foundation and the people that run it and what's going on there. I'll see you in the chat. I'm sure I will. Guys, please like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate it. I appreciate, again, all your support. This is Issues with Toddy One Skip. I'm working on another video. Has nothing to do with Scientology. Hope to get that out to you real soon as well. Guys, be better today than you were yesterday, but not half as good as you're going to be tomorrow. This is Toddy One Skip. Thanks, guys.